Religion has undoubtedly played a very important role in the development of human society, but it's interesting to see how limited its representation has been in certain strategy games. Religion is either omitted altogether or represented in certain ways that completely erode its historical significance. I'll state my thesis outright. I don't think it's quite right for games to treat religions as interchangeable. Monotheistic religions, polytheistic religions, philosophical codes, ancestor worship. Obviously, these are different from a personal perspective, but for communities, societies, and for rulers, they offer different benefits too. There are reasons beyond random chance why some religions have managed to spread, while other religious practices that were older or better established have died out. And I think these factors make for good gameplay. The good news is that the Civilization franchise has done a lot of things right and handled it in interesting ways. Civilization 5 and 6, specifically, offer a sort of template that other strategy games could benefit from, although there's still improvements that can be made. Let's see how it's been handled so far in the series and what options the developers will have going forward. Before that, hey, I'm starting a Patreon, details at the end of the video. In Civilization 1, 2, and 3, religion was not a mechanic coded into the game. You could even call them Marxist games, perhaps, as religion's really there as the opiate of the masses. Temples and religious wonders give happiness and nothing else. There's no distinction between sets of religious beliefs. These games are more simple and streamlined. I like that about them, but in bigger games, this approach would be a missed opportunity. There are two general ways for strategy games to differentiate between sets of religious beliefs. Type 1 is like Rome Total War. The different religious temples have different benefits to your cities. Things like a boost to population growth, trade, or a unit experience. Type 2 is something like Medieval Total War 2. Religions exist in your cities. You can spread religion, convert regions to your faith, and it affects diplomacy. For Type 2 games, the exact religion tends not to matter. In Medieval Total War, they're all mostly the same. The main differences were access to crusades or jihad, and whether or not you have to deal with the Pope. Generally, Type 2 games lean more towards simulation, while Type 1 games are more likely to be fantasy. And yes, Rome Total War was basically a fantasy game. Civilization has always straddled the line between these two genres, so it's natural that the series has tried both. Civilization 4 introduced religion properly to the franchise. 7 texts throughout the game cause your nation to found a specific religion if you're the first to research them. Civ 4 took a very strict Type 2 approach. Each of the religions are interchangeable. They all have the same effects. The only exceptions are the resources needed to speed up their cathedral-type building, and the 4 later religions give a missionary to the person who founds them. Religious buildings still give happiness and culture, and monasteries give science in the early game. There are diplomatic boosts for having the same state religion, and penalties for having different religions. With a great profit, you can rush a holy city wonder that gives you 1 gold for each city following the religion. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if you're using your own religion or somebody else's, and it never really matters what particular religion you have chosen. Religion was cut from Civ 5, but it was reintroduced in the Gods and Kings expansion. The new system is similar to how it works in Civilization 6. To start, you accumulate a new resource, faith, which can be spent on units, buildings, and great people. These games use what is a very Type 1 system, although with some elements of Type 2. Early on, you pick a pantheon. These are small bonuses often tied to specific environments or playstyles. Civs that generate a lot of faith early can found a religion. They can spread this around, and it lets them pick benefits to both cities that adopt the religion, and to themselves, the founder of the religion. Later on, they can add more by reforming or evangelizing another belief. These different beliefs and pantheons mean that there are functional differences between the religions. So, which of these approaches is better and more realistic? I think a lot of people would have the instinct to say that Type 2 is more appropriate for a game with a realistic setting. It's kind of cartoony otherwise, right? Like, there's no way that a god would come out of the sky and bless your city with +4 health, right? Atheists and agnostics would find this to be hocus-pocus nonsense, while religious folks could find this to be blasphemy. But oddly enough, Type 1 is actually more realistic. For proof of this, let's look back at Civilization 4. In this game, religions get created at different times, but they all have the same functionality. This means that the relevant global religions are always going to be Hinduism, Buddhism, maybe Judaism and Confucianism. Islam and Christianity spawn later. No one will convert to them because their cities already have other religions. But obviously, that's not what happened in human history. Christianity and Islam are the most influential religions in the world today, and older religions like Greek polytheism are irrelevant. This could never happen in Civilization 4, and it didn't happen just by coincidence in real life. It is because different religions offer different things to different societies, people, and rulers. Dietary restrictions affect public health. Mandates towards charity affect social equality. Building the caste system into religious laws affects social mobility. Requirements to regularly pray or meditate affect mindsets and mental health. Oral traditions that tie into land management and hunting strategies can affect the environment. Be fruitful and multiply. That is literally population growth. Almost any yield or metric in civilization could be on the table here, in ways that vary dramatically between different religions. It doesn't make sense to treat all religions the same, and it makes sense for religions to provide different benefits. This is already a game where different nations get different powers. I think Jainist commitment to non-violence should have a bigger impact on your nation than being Dutch. There's also a secondary set of conversations we could have here. If we see that Catholic families have more children than atheist families, how much of that is coming from religion, as opposed to other socioeconomic factors? Where do these associations come from? I've seen a lot of different interpretations for why kosher exists. Maybe it was mandated by some social or political authority for practical reasons. But it could also come from chance, or of course, divine inspiration. I think those later two options are really interesting, because if the beliefs were not chosen by the rulers or the citizens, then in-game they should be assigned at random. And I think that could be actually much more interesting than if the player gets to pick their own beliefs. More on that later. But regardless of where this all comes from, the associations definitely do exist, and I think it's fair game to include them in a computer game. The end result of this is that I actually love the systems from 5 and 6. Religions are differentiated, and you're able to pick unique bonuses that are themed after real-world religious beliefs. For example, in Sikhism, there is a requirement for religious services to feed the poor, even if these people follow a different religion. So, in Civilization 6, if you choose the Gurdwara as the structure for your religion, you gain access to a building that gives you additional food. That just makes sense to me. It creates a lot of interesting strategic choices, and it matches more clearly how things were in real life. I also really like the inclusion of faith. You could see it as a cheap way to gamify spiritual issues that don't have a lot of bearing to the material world, but I don't think that that's accurate. To me, it represents the fact that if society makes people care enough about religion, they'll do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. Pay tithes, do volunteer work, settle new lands, serve in the army, etc. This brings up an interesting issue when it comes to debates between religious people and non-religious people. Does religion really make people do things that they wouldn't otherwise do? Or do people just do what they want and use religion later as their excuse? Many opponents of organized religion will point to great acts of violence like the Crusades or the Spanish Inquisition and say, they did this in the name of God, and so that's the fault of religion. But if we take that at face value, we would also have to accept the claims of all the religious people who say that they made a great work of art because of God, or devoted themselves to scientific discovery because of God, or of course, who could forget that they won the Super Bowl because of God. So yes, if we accept that religion triggers war and grants crusaders and inquisitors, I think it's completely reasonable to buy great artists, workers, settlers, or even science buildings with faith, provided that you've met certain conditions. But for a series like Civilization that leans towards mythologizing history, where a cathedral wonder can somehow make tundra tiles more productive, I think that this is how things should be handled. So, all in all, Civilization 5 and 6 do a great job with religion and really push things into new and exciting territory. Still, I think that there are improvements that could be made. The big one would have to be how religion spread and how nations adopt them. First of all, I don't think that you should control missionaries as units on the map. I think it should be a menu-based system, kind of like espionage in Civ 3. This reduces map clutter and makes the system less tedious in the late game. Maybe you could have rare, special explorer missionaries that you do control on the map. This video is mostly about converting reality into gameplay systems, but this needed to be mentioned. Religion should also spread passively. I don't like how Civilization 7 got rid of this feature. Secondly, I think that there should be more ebb and flow of religion throughout the game. I think it's really boring if 6 out of 8 nations found a religion and keep it to themselves. I think religious benefits should be assigned semi-randomly, and you really have to think hard about whether you use your own religion, or if a religion founded by another player has benefits that are a better fit for you. I think you should be able to adopt someone else's religion and make it your own, the way that Italy did with Christianity, or what Rome did with Greek paganism. This would make people less attached to their own religion that they have founded, and encourage players to be more flexible, without losing the big potential upside of hegemony over an influential religion. So, in Civ 6 terms, I think you should be able to access founder and enhancer beliefs without having founded the religion if you jump through certain hoops. I think diplomatic effects should be a consideration here. This was big in Civ 4, but I didn't feel it as much in Civ 5 and 6. Maybe there's a perfect religion for you, founded by a faraway civ, but your immediate neighbors want you to use something less practical. Maybe it could tie into trade systems the same way that Islam spread to Southeast Asia. And finally, an important component in having a world where religions spread more naturally is making sure that newly founded religions can compete. What I would suggest is this. Early game religious beliefs have early game benefits, flat increases to yields, boosts to unimproved tiles, or general bonuses that will get your snowball rolling. Later game religious beliefs are not necessarily strong in a vacuum, but they should give benefits that are tailored to the late game, global percent increases to yields, or boosts that tie in directly, not to making yourself stronger, but to achieving specific victory conditions. I think a good point of comparison would be the social policies from Civilization 5. Early game collective rule is wonderful. Space procurements is not, but that changes as the game progresses. I think this is completely realistic too. Ritual bathing is much more valuable in a society that hasn't developed germ theory yet. The Protestant work ethic is a lot more useful under capitalism than it would be for people who are nomads. With this late-game, early-game belief system, players founding a late-game religion would be able to benefit from making the switch, and their neighbors would be interested in converting too. Older religions would need to go through reformations to keep up, and maybe these become very expensive if your religion is more widespread. So you can't just found alcoholism 2500 BC and convert half the world and rest on your laurels. Even if you have a strong early religion, you need to continue to put work into it. Alright, I have a few other miscellaneous comments and suggestions. The first one is a rule that's currently being followed, and that's that these should be bonuses, not penalties. Some religions have tenets that are, at best, a complicated set of trade-offs. These tenets should be ignored. So, I will choose my example very carefully to piss off as few people as possible. Are there any Zoroastrians in the audience? Big Ahura Mazda fans? Okay. Zoroastrianism has procedures for disposing of dead bodies by putting them on top of a big tower and letting birds pick them apart. You can imagine that in modern times, leaving aside the decline in vulture populations, this wouldn't be the most efficient method of disposing of corpses, and also not the one with the best smell. But for sensitivity reasons, it shouldn't be included in the game. Focus on things that are strong and helpful to the world. Next point. Philosophy is not a religion. Civilization 4, I'm looking at you. Confucianism is not a religion. Taoism, you're on thin ice. I think that this is an interesting topic because everything I said until now about the different religions having advantages could also apply to culture. Let me give you some examples showing how ridiculous the overlap is here. Certain religions have an aversion to eating pork, but for some reason, so did people from Scotland. In Max Weber's The Protestant Work Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism, he argues that Protestant thought drove saving and investment. but China's high savings rate in the present day has been linked to the influence of Confucian philosophy on Chinese culture. So, culture and mainstream ethics and philosophy are a big deal. I think it could be cool if culture had a system that was parallel to religion. Similar to how individual citizens had culture in Civ 3, just with deeper gameplay implications. But regardless, the two should not be conflated. Confucianism is not a religion, even if it can affect social behavior in a similar way. To summarize, Civilization 5 and 6 have really cool systems for religious beliefs that are differentiated in a gameplay sense, bonuses that set religions apart. And I really like how they use faith to represent all of the incredible and useful things that people do when they are inspired by the divine. That being said, in Civilization, religion needs to spread in a more natural and interesting way. Okay, that's it. News! I'm absolutely fed up with the YouTube membership system constantly showing my own exclusive videos back to me as one of the 5 slots on the home screen, so I'm switching to Patreon. $2 a month for the basic membership. There will be occasional exclusive videos. I will start streaming again. You can choose what I stream, and I'll commit to 1 stream a year for every 12 members I get. If you subscribe, I'll also check out your save files and give you my opinions about them. Now, if you're on the Discord, you know that I already do that for free, and I won't stop doing it for free, but this way you can cosplay being a generous member of the nobility, offering me your patronage. It is remarkably hard for me to paywall things and monetize my channel, because if you've had any interaction with me, you know that I cannot stop yapping about this game series. I exist perpetually at that maximum level. Nothing will change that. Do you know that I made an app for iOS and Android? Here are some picture-based guides that I've made. I would love it if building community around these games could be my life's work. If you would like me to put more effort into this work and get paid for it, the link is below. Take care, everybody. Cheers.